rental demand. That's specifically for investors, obviously. Strong transport links, walking distance to transport. Good internet is actually another one that came out. Service charges and service charge costs, that's one that's becoming more and more prominent. And another one which I find quite interesting, because in the past this hasn't been so prominent, but it seems to be gaining prominence, is energy efficiency.
Ensure it's near transport links if you're wanting to look at it as an investment. And from a resale point of view, if it's well done, obviously, light, bright, has good storage, good room spaces, as higher ceilings as possible. This obviously isn't terribly achievable in a modern property or a new build. But just basically, would you live there yourself?
If you can afford to buy a freehold house, that is probably better, because then you have control over your own costs and control over your own destiny. But I wouldn't rule out a leasehold property. Just be very, very, very careful if you're buying a sub 80-year lease. You really need to take specialist advice to make sure that you're not making a mistake and spending too much on that shorter lease.
The best things to look forward to when buying a property in London will be, is it close to amenities, tube stations, high streets, parks, if that's the area you're looking in. I think those are the key things that you're looking for.
Check out the neighbourhood. Any property I've ever bought, I've always hung around the street at night, hoping not to get arrested, just to make sure to see, who my neighbours are going to be, if I didn't know them anyway. In some cases there was certainly one house I wouldn't have bought if I didn't know who the neighbour was. Just be wise. Don't be just be cautious and be wise and don't believe what the agent says.
You don't want mansion blocks that need a lot of refurbishment and the lifts need redoing, and therefore, as a landlord, you'll be hit by extraordinary items to update the block. You don't want that. Avoid locations which need a car to get to. So you've got to be near public transport, and ideally something with a garage, sort of underground garage or some sort of parking facilities.
Wherever you're buying, what is the best location in that jurisdiction that you can afford, that you can be? And the way to choose location is really watching what's the infrastructure around it. Is there train stations? Is there travel? Is there shops? Is there convenience stores? Where's the nearest hospital? And look at some of the really basic fundamentals when you're buying. It doesn't have to be in prime central London, it can be in any other city, but always look at what is the best location.
It's the famous saying, location, 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 but that should be coupled with access to transport and amenities, because there's nice locations that aren't that well located for transport. But if you focus on location and focus on the proximity to transport to get you into central London if it's outside, and the local amenities, those are really the absolute keys. I think also when you're looking, you should look at the potential growth of an area. So pick an area where there's big developments going on, or big developments in a neighbouring town or streets or close by, because that will normally have a drag effect on that area as well, and you'll see prices rise as new developments come to the fore.
What would I look for when buying property in London? Firstly, the location, obviously. Secondly, the square footage. How does it work? Will it work for me? And then the obvious amenity surrounding, major communication routes, schools, outside space, parks, that sort of thing.
Ultimately, this boils down to your particular needs. There are a group of buyers who are buying purely for investment, and that, at the end of the day, is a calculation and people looking at yield-based value. The majority of the transactions that we look after, it's people who are buying for a need. They're sending a child to school in the UK and they need a base here, or they've had their family's growing, they need to upsize, people are downsizing, just the natural drivers of people buying and selling property. And bearing in mind that property ownership is a long-term purchase generally, I think looking for a property, it's something that you can spend time in. If this property is only going to suit your needs for 2 to 3 years because you're paying stamp duty on the way in, you used to be able to do that when stamp duty was much lower, and we had plenty of people who, particularly in their sort of middle stage of property ownership or their families were growing, they would buy something with a 3 to 5 year timeline, sell it and move on. But the stamp duty makes that quite difficult now. So looking for a property that perhaps you can grow into and own for 10 or more years is one of the things that we find that buyers are looking for. But ultimately it's something that you're happy with, and you know, a house is a home, and one's got to be able to enjoy that space.